Hello, students. Mrs. Miller here. I am going to finish up chapter 6. So, in the first part of chapter 6, we read about Dr. Carson's terrible temper and how he almost stabbed his friend. The only reason that he didn't stab his friend was because his friend had a belt buckle that protected him. And so he's wondering, how can he have this temper? He wonders if he's crazy. So I'm going to pick up right in here. Here we go. I dreamed of being a doctor since I was 8 years old. But how could I fulfill the dream with such a terrible temper? When angry, I went out of control and had no idea how to stop. I'd never make anything of myself if I didn't control my temper. If only I could do something about the rage that burned inside me. 2 hours passed. The green and brown squiggly snake-like design on the linoleum swam before my eyes. I felt sick to my stomach, disgusted with myself, and ashamed. Unless I get rid of this temper, I said aloud, I'm not going to make it. If Bob hadn't worn that big buckle, he'd probably be dead, and I'd be on my way to jail or reform school. Misery washed over me. My sweaty shirt stuck to my back. Sweat trickled down my armpits and my sides. I hated myself, but I couldn't help myself, and so I hated myself even more. From somewhere deep inside my mind came a strong impression: prayer. My mother had taught me to pray. My teachers at the religious school in Boston often told us that God would help us if we only asked Him. For weeks, for months, I had been trying to control my temper, figuring I could handle it myself. Now, in that small, hot bathroom, I knew the truth. I could not handle my temper alone. I felt as though I could never face anyone again. How could I look my mother in the eye? Would she know? How could I ever see Bob again? How could he help but hate me? How could he ever trust me again? Lord, I whispered, you have to take this temper from me. If you don't, I'll never be free from it. I'll end up doing things a lot worse than trying to stab one of my best friends. Already heavy into psychology, I had been reading Psychology Today for a year. I knew that temper was a personality trait. Standard thinking in the field pointed out the difficulty, if not the impossibility, of modifying personality traits. Even today, some experts believe that the best we can do is accept our limitations and adjust to them. Tears streaming down my fingers. Tears streamed between my fingers. Lord, despite what all the experts tell me, you can change me. You can free me from you can free me forever from this destructive personality trait. I wiped my nose on a piece of toilet paper and let it drop to the floor. You've promised that if we come to you and ask something in faith, that you'll do it. I believe that you can change this in me. I stood up, looking at the narrow window, still pleading for God's help. I couldn't go on hating myself forever for all the terrible things I'd done. I sank down on the toilet, sharp mental pictures of other temper fits filling my mind. I saw my anger, clenched my fists against my rage. I wouldn't be any good for anything if I couldn't change. My poor mother, I thought. She believes in me. Not even she knows how bad I am. Misery engulfed me in darkness. If you don't do this for me, God, I've got no place else to go. At one point, I'd slipped out of the bathroom long enough to grab a Bible. Now I opened it and began to read in Proverbs. Immediately, I saw a string of verses about angry people and how they get themselves into trouble. Proverbs 16:32 impressed me the most. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. My lips moved wordlessly as I continued to read. I felt as though the verses had been written just for me, just to me, for me. The words of Proverbs condemned me, but they also gave me hope. After a while, peace began to fill my mind. My hands stopped shaking. The tears stopped. During those hours alone in the bathroom, something happened to me. God heard my deep cries of anguish. A feeling of lightness flowed over me, and I knew a change of heart had taken place. I felt different. I was different. At last I stood up, placed the Bible on the edge of the tub and went to the sink. I washed my face and hands, straightened my clothes. I walked out of the bathroom a changed young man. My temper will never control me again, I told myself. Never again. I'm free. And since that day, since those long hours wrestling with myself and crying to God for help, I have never had a problem with my temper. That same afternoon, I decided I would read the Bible every day. I've kept that practice as a daily habit and especially enjoy the book of Proverbs. Even now, whenever possible, I pick up my Bible and read the first thing every morning. The miracle that took place was incredible when I stopped to think about it. Some of my psychology oriented friends insist that I still have the potential for anger. Maybe they're right, but I've lived more than 20 years since that experience, and I've never had another flare up or even had a serious problem of needing to control my temper. I can tolerate amazing amounts of stress and ridicule. By God's grace, it still doesn't require any effort to shake off unpleasant, irritating things. God has helped me to conquer my terrible temper once and forever. During those hours in the bathroom, I also came to realize that if people could make me angry, they could control me. Why should I give someone else such power over my life? Over the years, I've chuckled at people who deliberately did things they thought would make me angry. I'm no better than anyone else, but I laugh inside at how foolish people can be trying to make me angry. They don't have any control over me. And this is the reason. From that terrible day when I was 14 years old, my faith in God has been intensely personal and an important part of who I am. About that time, I started to hum or sing a hymn that had continued to be my favorite. Jesus is all the world to me. Whenever anything irritates me, that hymn dissolves my negativity. I've explained it this way to young people. I have sunshine in my heart, regardless of conditions around me. I'm not afraid of anything as long as I think of Jesus Christ and my relationship to Him, and remember that the one who created the universe can do anything. I also have evidence, my own experience, that God can do anything because He changed me. From age 14, I began to focus on the future. My mother's lessons and those of several of my teachers were at last paying off. So, friends, I see now that the terrible temper is the thing that he was alluding to in the previous chapter, and how that almost ruined his life. But I still am curious as to how this is all going to play, because now at the end of this chapter, he's 14 years old, and he says that he's focusing now on his mother's lessons and the lessons from his teachers. But how's that going to play back into what we read earlier when he was a sophomore in high school and his grades started to slip? I still have a feeling that things are going to come full circle and we're going to find out.